This episode of the Media Leader podcast was edited by our production partner, Trisonic, the audio advertising specialists with over 25 years experience. For more, visit trisonic.co.uk.
It's not a one and done. It's an ongoing process of, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't work, finding out where the gaps are, finding out how users respond to it. We're a very, very user-centric company that tests, learns, moves on, evolves, makes better.
Welcome to a special episode of the Media Leader podcast produced in partnership with Roku. It's been a busy past few months for the TV company. In the US, it's launched a new low-cost subscription service called Howdy, which aims to be a supplementary service to quote-unquote premium or more expensive subscriptions like Netflix and Disney+. And back here in the UK, this summer Roku launched 40 free ad-supported streaming TV or FAST channels on its platform, which aim to provide a variety of always-on streaming options at no additional cost for Roku device users. The company has emerged as a key partner for other entertainment brands to increase the reach and viewability of their content, a goal that has become increasingly important in a fragmented TV landscape. Tom Price is the content distribution director at Roku. He joined me recently to discuss the recent developments at Roku, what makes the UK TV market unique, and how the company has developed a toolkit of advertising opportunities for its content partners. This is part one of a two-part conversation. Later in the year, be on the lookout for a follow-up interview with Roku's EMEA ad sales director, Mike Shaw. But for now, we hope you enjoy. Tom Price, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. You worked at ITV for nearly 15 years, is that right?
Yeah, if you count BritBox as well. So I spent sort of 15 years at or around ITV, mainly helping them wrestle with the question of, the internet is coming, streaming is coming. I think way back 2008, I worked on a sort of very nascent joint venture they had with BBC and Channel 4 at the time, which in the end the regulators decided was too concentrated, which right. I think you look back with history and think that wasn't quite right. But a lot of other internal projects, supporting streaming platforms, and then latterly setting up BritBox first in North America and then in the UK, and then folding BritBox UK into ITVX to make that sort of bigger streaming proposition. So a lot of streaming activity coming from a traditional broadcaster that's really wrestling with the question of, how do I compete in this environment with much more choice? Where I've come from a world where there used to be, 5 channels and 50 channels, 100 channels, and suddenly, all of the content in the world is available to all people all the time. And that provides challenges, but those big media businesses, and a lot of them that I work with now at Roku, still have a lot to offer, and they still have a lot of great content that we want to bring to people.
I was going to say, you're doing much the same work at Roku. What attracted you to Roku in the first place?
I mean, Roku's, I find with people in the UK, sometimes I have to introduce Roku a little. We spoke earlier, you said, you're very familiar coming from the US, we're the leading streaming platform in the US, in Mexico, in Canada, across a lot of the Americas. Roku was founded almost 20 years ago and brought out its first streaming media player, which is a device you could plug in and watch initially just Netflix, and then, Prime and YouTube and all of the Hulu, all of the other services that came. And we have now built that into a business which has got over 90 million active accounts streaming video on Roku every month. So in the US, that means about 45% of all video streamed to a television in the US is streamed via our devices, whether that's, Netflix, YouTube, our own service, the Roku channel. So it's a really big business. A lot of our focus now and what I've joined to help support is, international growth. And the UK is a key market for that. So in the UK, we're now in, I think, 14 TV brands. We're sold in all sorts of retailers, Currys, obviously on places like Amazon, in places like Tesco and Asda and Morrison's. So, really wide distribution for our platform. And we've got all of the apps that people would expect in this country. And we're growing fast in this market.
Yeah. How do you view the UK from a growth potential perspective?
The UK has been always one of the most important TV markets in the world. It's a big advertising market. It's a big TV production market. It's a big consumer base, reasonably big pay TV market as well. So there's lots of potential in that market. And I think it's really a sort of important market for Roku to grow in. And it's it's quite distinct. We've got, a set of regulation, a set of local established broadcasters. So although, I talk about Roku as a global platform, and obviously we bring global apps, it's very important to us to, in each market we operate in, to have the right local proposition for consumers there.
This summer, I suppose a little bit to that point, Roku launched 40 FAST channels here in the UK. I know FAST was something that Roku had done in other markets as well. Finally happened here in the UK. I'm curious a little bit, especially from a content perspective, what's behind that strategy of sort of getting into free ad-supported TV?
Yeah, free ad-supported TV it's a big part of Roku's business internationally. It's a big part of the TV landscape. Been a big part in the UK. In some ways, I think a reason that what the industry calls fast channels, free ad-supported channels, have come a little bit later into the UK is that there are already a lot of free ad-supported channels here, the public broadcasters and things like Freeview. So I think the role of fast in the UK is slightly different. It's building on a really established user behavior that people like to consume linear TV. It's slightly counterintuitive. You could think when you can choose to start to watch any program in the world at any time, you would just do that. And why would you be fixed to a schedule of a TV channel? But what FAST has demonstrated in multiple markets is that people actually, for certain people, certain times, that's a really compelling use case. I actually just want to sit back and have a curated list of stuff played at me. So FAST is a way to do that. It's got a really sort of low entry point. It's not complex for a content provider to create a FAST channel. And what it offers consumers is, whereas in the old world of free broadcast, you maybe had sort of 40, 50 free channels. FAST can really enhance that choice and bring a lot of niche options that you find the channel that, it's not for everyone, but it's right for you. So in the US, it's been hugely successful. It's been a huge driver of people cutting the cord with cable and moving to fast channels. In the UK, it's a different dynamic. I can talk about how we're also supporting free broadcast. We're now doing the Freely app, which is, again, a similar idea in a way. It's bringing all free broadcast channels delivered via streaming. And our founding philosophy as Roku, I think, is in the future, all TV will be streamed. This is sort of a phase where people are having to run two business models. They're having to still run satellites or antennas or whatever. But, the long term is all content will be streamed. And, we're moving to that, and there will be different business models that work. So some of the big broadcasters will support things like Freely. For lots of other content, fast is a great way. If you've got a set of content and a compelling proposition for a fan base, you can spin up a fast channel and work with someone like Roku to monetize and bring that channel, have a business model, provide users with more choice.
What do you think the timeline on that looks like? You say in sort of in the long term, everything will just be on streaming, ideally as much of it on Roku as possible, right? But how long are we talking? Because I feel like I've been reporting on this industry for almost 4 years now, and a relatively small amount of time. And yet I've already seen a lot of change in terms of consumer behavior, especially in terms of TV watching.
Yeah, sure. It's changing. It's changing at one level super quick, but at another level steadily and relentlessly. So it's not like the existing behaviors have flip overnight. But if you look at the ratings in the UK, in the US, in any market, year after year, less time is spent watching broadcast or cable or, whatever the older TV models are, and more time is spent streaming. And that doesn't show any real sign of stopping as people, people are not aging into the user behaviors of their parents. They are keeping their habits as they get older. So I think in the US, we recently announced that, or if you look at the Nielsen Gauge, which is the rating system over there, more video consumption measured is streamed via Roku than the entirety of broadcast TV. So, CBS, ABC, NBC, etc., which is kind of quite a milestone, right? If you'd gone back, you want to say that. In the UK, we're not at that point yet. Streaming is a little bit smaller, although that's not because people don't have streaming. Pretty much everyone in the UK, bar a sort of small slug of holdouts, have got access to streaming. The balance of consumption is a bit different because the landscape and the history is a bit different.
The strength of maybe some of the public service broadcasters that you have here is very different than in the US market.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I sat in ITV, you looked at the issue that every year a bit more consumption is over here and a bit less is over there. And that's why, a lot of the work that I do now with ITV or Channel 4 or Channel 5 or Sky or anyone is about, your audience is moving to streaming. You've still got great content. they still want to watch it. How do we, get your app discovered, get your content discovered, and make you successful in this new paradigm, just as you were in the old one?
I really want to talk about that because there is a lot of noise in streaming. It's not just the broadcasters, but lots of different streaming services that are all competing for everyone's attention. I think my partner and I have probably wasted days of our lives searching for the movie or show either that we do have in our minds that we want to watch and just don't know exactly on what platform it might exist, or if we're just looking for something to catch our eye. I'm curious how you view what has become a pretty crowded streaming market and the work that you do sort of trying to cut through that noise.
Yeah, it's the paradox of choice, right? If all content is available, what on earth do I choose to watch? And it's the challenge that all apps, all platforms in connected TV are wrestling with. I think it's a problem that needs to be solved really at the platform level. However much any one provider, even a BBC or even a Netflix wants to say, well, you can just find it all in our app. No one's got it all. But if you look at a platform like Roku, it is all there because we've got all of the apps. And what we then provide are tools to help users get to the right content in the right app, easily. So, for example, the foundation of that is we have a single search and a single catalog. It's not a broad internet search, it's a TV specific search that's got premium video content in it. And you can pick up your voice remote and you can say the show you want, and we will say, look, here are that show. Maybe sometimes there's varieties of that show. There's different spin-offs of things. And if I choose the one that I want, here are all the apps that have got that content. So, making that user journey easier. That's if you know specifically what you want to watch. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you don't know what you want to watch. Sometimes you want to be sort of inspired and find something new, or the type of thing you want. So for that, we bring a different set of tools. We bring some tools, like we have a section called What to Watch, which is, recommendations, a few editorial, but mainly, personalized recommendations based on your history of other shows that you might like, but also right in there, a thing that's super popular with users, which is cross-platform continue watching. So what's the last thing I watched across a range of apps? I don't have to think, I was watching that show, but which app was it in? Let me go and find continue watching. Just put it right there in the what to watch section on your TV, and then take you with minimal fuss into the app. So there's a whole load of tools that we do as a platform level, which are very user-centric. And I think of the platform business really about two things. A big part of it is partnerships. So the partnerships we have with content providers, from the Roku point of view, actually, it's much more complex. The partnerships we have with manufacturers who make our TVs, with retailers who sell our TVs, with advertisers. So there's a whole bunch of partnerships. But cutting through it all is the user experience. If you have all the best partnerships in the world, but the user experience isn't great, then users are still not going to stick with your platform. So you've got to be incredibly user-centric. You've got to think, the sort of test of anything that we launch on Roku is, we've built this feature, we think it's a good idea, let's test it. What are the results? Did it drive more engagement? Did people like it? What was the feedback we got? And Roku's a very user-centric company. Thinks about how can, the phrase my colleagues in product use, how do we delight our users with this feature? So some things we do seem a little bit sort of tangential, but if it brings extra delight, we like to do that as well. So a sort of example is Roku City, which is our screensaver, which on one level is just a screensaver, right? But it's actually become this kind of iconic thing with different businesses in it now, but different buildings, different, we have billboards in there where you can see shows, but actually you test it with users and people love it. So it's it's an example of how you can do a little thing around the edges and actually really elevate the experience.
Does it worry you at all that a lot of the different streaming, there's so many different streaming services, a lot of the prices have gone up on a lot of the streaming services. So some of the Roku users, I'm sure, have either had to cut back or maybe thought differently about churning through different streaming services. I appreciate the convenience of making the user experience as great as possible. And there's definitely features on there that would cut into me and my partner's time searching for things. But sometimes you search for something, it's like, oh, dang, I actually can't watch that. Where do users go from there?
I think as a platform, what we want to do is put the user in control. So let them, we have a payment system that's integrated into Roku. You can subscribe and unsubscribe to services directly through your device. If the content you really want to watch is available in a service, it should be really easy to add that, but it should be, within your control to leave as well. it's not really for me to comment on, where other people are pricing their services. Often there are cheaper options with advertising. But I think an interesting thing that Roku has done recently in the US is we've launched our own ad-free SVOD, Howdy, at a very competitive, sub $3 sort of price. That's, I think, filling a gap in the market. In some ways, it's a little bit of an opportunistic move. We're not doing, massive budget originals. We're not buying really expensive sport. In some ways, it's a bit like Netflix used to be back in the day before it became what it's become now, which is very different. But, if we can find the right proposition of great content at a really attractive price, then, we're finding there's a market for that.
Big back catalogs, supplementary to maybe someone who has a streaming service.
Yeah.
So a Netflix or a Amazon Prime Video or something, but not everything is going to be on those platforms. But there are opportunities for them to maybe watch through Howdy in the US, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. And look, some people will just want it all. Some people are like, I just need to have all the content and I don't care about the price. And other people are a bit more picky. And that's what streaming has done. At a sort of question of this evening, I'm sitting down to watch something. What am I going to watch? Where am I going to find it? That's, I think, the power that the platform can bring to help simplify that journey. Another good example, again, in North America is, sports is very fragmented in North America. So, even one sport like the NFL, you have games on a whole bunch of different services, and it may vary depending on what city you're in and all this sort of stuff. And what Roku's built is, a thing called Sports Zone and, sub-zones within it, NFL, baseball, etc., where you can say, this is my team that I support. And we'll say, okay, great, your team is playing tonight and it's on this app, and go straight and launch and, find that content rather than having to go, is the Tuesday night game on this service, right, or, any of those problems. So how we look at this is, how can we as Roku make the journey easier for our users? How can we, but for our content partners, how can we bring the users straight to the content they've got when they've invested in that content?
It's almost like, TV is fragmented so much, you're actually trying to put the pieces back together to some degree, is what it really sounds like, especially with the sport example.
Absolutely, yeah, and really across everything, it's how can we find a way to put it back together? And Fast is kind of a way of doing that as well. Content has gone out in different places. How can we bring all of live TV back? Whether that's live TV from broadcast, live TV from new Fast channels, and have the best experience for our users.
Are there plans to bring Howdy elsewhere?
Comment on that, but look, we're really pleased with it, and I think there will be more to come from Howdy.
Gotcha. So you work a lot with content partners, and I know that there's lots of tools in your toolkit to try and elevate some of their content. You mentioned the Roku City. I agree, it's always a very charming sort of screensaver whenever it pops up on my own TV, but there's lots of other things that you do. What are some of the other tools in that toolkit? And also, how do you decide, depending on a given content partner, which ones to use in what situation?
Yeah, I think we've got two categories of tools. The first I've touched on a bit already, which is the things you get just by integrating fully with our platform. So you want to be in continue watching, you want to be in search, you want to be in recommendations. Those are really integrations. So we work with our partners to make sure their metadata's integrated correctly. Some of this stuff is a bit more fiddly behind the scenes than you'd ever expect. But, just getting that really smooth experience, making sure the shows, all come through correctly. The second tool we have, which is, I think if you're a content provider, the question of, okay, I've got that show, loads of people love it, it'll show up in recommendations, people will find it. The second big question you've got is like, I've got a big new thing and I want to tell everyone about this. And in the old world, you would have said, I'll put it on broadcast television at 9 p.m. or something like that, And I think this week in the UK, I saw an article that for the first time, all the main channels had sub 1 million ratings in the 9 p.m. slot.
I saw that, yes, as the Guardian reported.
Yeah, a bit of a milestone. And, I remember when that number used to be, 7 million was a good show, then 5 million was a good show, then 3 million was a good show. That number has come down, but people have still got big shows they want to launch. So what we bring as a platform is the Roku home screen is the first thing Roku users see when they turn on the television. Charlie Collier Roku calls it the lead in to all television is the first thing you see. Whereas, we used to say, we'll put it immediately after Coronation Street at ITV and that will give it a good lead in. Actually, the best lead in you've got is the Roku home screen. On the Roku home screen, we have a big portrait sort of movie poster style banner that we call the marquee ad, which is, our key ad unit that can be used, and that can be bought. It can be bought with data, so you can target particular segments, people who've already got your app, people who haven't got your app, people who've had your app but haven't used it recently but might be interested, different, content preferences. So, we've got that big tool, and that's probably our, I would say to content partners, that's your biggest opportunity to tell people about your new show. And we use that in a variety of ways. Some of our content partners, particularly in the UK, where we're conscious of public service broadcasting, we make some of it available for public service broadcasters because they're important. But at the same time, we have a bunch of enhanced tools if you want to roadblock that ad and, show every Roku home in the UK that ad tonight because it's your big show. You can buy that product from us. That's one of the tools in the toolbox. We have another ad unit around the home screen called Spotlight, which has a sort of just press play and this one will play, which is a really nice user journey. And then for certain things, you can actually take over and sort of theme the whole home screen. So you can turn on, and we do this for TV shows. We did it for an ITV show last year around a new game show they did. But we also do it for theatrical. So content which isn't really on Roku yet. So the launch of Barbie or Despicable Me 4, we'll take over and you'll have a Barbie themed home screen and you can watch trailers and things. But actually we're pushing you to go and watch the movie in a cinema. So, we've got a whole range of products, and, the guys with the movies are also the guys who are our partners. We work with them across whether they're launching a movie in theaters or they're launching, House of the Dragon on Roku. It's a similar toolkit we can offer.
I mean, it is just a canvas. It's an ad medium, right? It's an ad format. So whether or not you can immediately click into and watch that show right away, or if you're hoping someone views the
or
ad,
if you're just going to watch the trailer and go to the cinema. Yeah.
Right. It's really interesting. I know, because you were at ITV previously, I know you have partnered with ITV on a number of things. I think there was a recent partnership with ITVX as well.
Yeah, sure. So
what worked for them, and especially when you're tailoring something for a public service broadcast, you mentioned sort of almost a due prominence argument of sort of wanting to provide space for them. What types of things do you work with the PSBs on?
Well, we give them due prominence. Their apps are prominently placed. They get a certain amount of media, effectively included. But what ITV were looking to do actually with the relaunch of ITVX, as it was to go beyond just I want my sort of due prominence. They want to say no, I am out there. I am competing in streaming. I am I've got a target audience. I've got people who are not engaging with the ITV brand who I'd like to intrigue and bring to our content. And so our team worked with them on a range of tools and campaigns to do that, different audience targets, different formats, all of the ones that we've been talking about. What we always do when we work with a partner like that is we keep a small group back who we don't show it to, so we can always measure the lift, and we do that with ITV. I think we got pretty much double the engagement with their app from the group that we ran all of our marketing at versus the group that we didn't. And it's a small group. Most people get the marketing when you buy marketing from us, but we always make it measurable. We always make it trackable.
Right.
The same, and that really came out of their sort of statement that they've got a bunch of aggressive targets. They're going to double users, hours, etc. And we sort of sit down and the conversation I have with someone like ITV can be quite subtle about what they're actually trying to do now. Sometimes it's not just more hours of streaming. It's about, getting the reach up or finding new people or re-engaging old people. We also worked, there's been a lot of relaunching in the broadcaster space with streaming apps. So Channel 5 relaunched recently, rebranded away from My5 to just this unified watch stream branding across 5. Again, we supported that with a number of tactics, and we're working with, most of the local broadcasters in some way.
What about some of the non-PSBs? There's been also quite a few rebrands recently, I think. HBO Max is coming to the UK soon.
It is.
So that's certainly one to look out for. I imagine that will be integrated at some point, or certainly, well, I don't know, actually.
HBO Max is a big global partner of ours. I think you can
Right.
make some assumptions about its availability. Look, we carry all of the big global apps, and you're right, they're the other. We have the local partners who are competing for share of voice. We have the global apps, whether that's Disney or HBO or Apple, and they've all got great content as well, and they also want to tell people about it. So, right. It's a bit like going down to, Piccadilly Circus and seeing all of the billboards. There's a lot of great content out there, and everyone would like to drive the awareness and bring people in. people are then trying to build a longer term, there's things you can only do once you're in the app. Do they actually like the show? Is your app actually, functional and suggests more things to watch at the end of the show you've watched? That's really in the partner's hand. But what we can do is bring the horse to water.
Right. What's next in terms of what you're looking for in terms of building close relationships with some of your content partners? Are there problems that they're raising that you want to solve further? I mentioned there's been some rebrands. Apple TV Plus is now going to be Apple TV. You have HBO coming into the UK properly. So even more competition coming. I imagine that could increase demand for services or different types of things that you might want to do for them.
Yeah, the great thing about this market is there's always something new happening. It's not been in a steady state for a number of years. Someone is always changing or bringing a new service to market or merging or demerging. So, a lot of that change drives things. From a Roku point of view, actually, that we can't control that world out there. What we can do is provide all of our partners with a great set of tools and provide our users with a great experience. So, in terms of things that we're looking to bring to the UK, obviously Fast has launched. I view the Fast that we've launched, the 40 channels, as kind of step one, really. We'd like to build on that. We'd like to bring more local content in. We'd like to really strengthen the portfolio. So, it's not a one and done. It's an ongoing process of, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't work, finding out where the gaps are, finding out how users respond to it. We're a very, very user-centric company that tests, learns, moves on, evolves, makes better. We'd like to bring more of the features that Roku deploys in other markets to the UK. So if you look at our home screen, it's always been very simple, and simplicity will remain a key element of the Roku experience. But we're starting to slightly enrich that home screen, put a little bit more content in there, just so that people can still get really quickly to their apps if they want to get quickly to their apps. But there's a couple more options to choose from along the way. So we've done that in other markets. You'll see also some things get reported that we've been testing elsewhere. And, some of those things are tested and don't go anywhere. Some of them are tested and do go somewhere. But the UK is probably a little bit behind the US or the Canadian or Mexican markets. So we just like to, in terms of what we're doing with our home screen, so we'd like to bring some of those elements. And I think that can be really good for our content partners in terms of driving discovery into a greater range of apps, because at Roku we'd like a lot of our content partners to succeed. We don't really want a world where everyone just watches one app, because it'd be a bit of a boring world, wouldn't it? We would like a diverse and thriving range of content partners on our platform, and that's what we seek to support.
Last question: what are you watching right now?
Right now, I'm going to be very loyal to my PSBs. I'm watching a BBC police drama called Blue Lights, which is set in modern day Northern Ireland, and it's just kind of fascinating, actually, as a Brit who grew up, with, I remember when the bombs were going off and things, and it's easy to sort of put it aside, but actually it's sort of, who knows how realistic all stories are, but just the fact that this other world, which is at one point very familiar, and another were very alien to someone living in, who grew up in the UK and living in London. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding that really, really great. And actually it's a great example of how, a country kind of tells stories about itself via the medium of television, which I think is a really important thing.
That appeals to local audiences.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that from somewhere else.
I'm watching that on my Roku.
There you go. Tom Price, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Media Leader Podcast. Our executive producer is me, Jack Benjamin. Special thanks to our production partner, TriSonic. You can find all our episodes on the podcast platform of your choice or on our website at uk.themedialeader.com. But do please remember to subscribe to be notified of our next episode. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at The Media Leader to receive daily coverage of all the biggest news stories in media and advertising. From all of us at The Media Leader, I'm Jack Benjamin. See you next time.